I drove 9 hours through pounding rain, my knees aching with arthritis. A carrot cake I'd baked from scratch sat on the passenger seat, meant to surprise my daughter on her 50th birthday. But when I finally walked in, drenched and cold, laughter echoed from the kitchen. "God, I hope she crashes," Laurel said, her voice clear as if she were standing right next to me. "Then we wouldn't have to deal with her non-stop calls." Her husband added, "Or maybe she'll just get lost and give us one weekend without the guilt." They both laughed. I left the cake on their counter. 9 days later, I rewrote my will. 3 weeks after that, they were still puzzled over why their credit cards stopped working. At 78, I'd finally figured out that revenge can taste best when it comes with financial consequences. Before I go on, feel free to subscribe if you like stories about quiet strength. Tell me where you're watching from. I'm Birdie Matt. I've been a widow for 12 years, survived cancer, and I'm a retired librarian who still organizes her spice rack alphabetically. After Harold passed, I stayed in our colonial home in Millbrook. The memories kept me company. I lived alone with his cardigan still hanging on our bedroom door, the garden he planted blooming under my care. My connection with my daughter had been growing colder for years, though I chose to ignore it. Our weekly phone calls got shorter. Her voice always tightened when I mentioned visiting. The reasons they gave, work, home projects, social plans, seemed endless. Yet somehow, they never involved me. Last Christmas, instead of visiting, they went to Barbados. "Work's been wild," Kent claimed, even as their Instagram showed them sipping drinks by the sea. I blamed myself. Maybe I was too emotional, too lonely, too stuck in the past. Still, I kept sending care packages, homemade cookies, knitted scarves, birthday checks that got bigger the more I felt ignored. I became the grandma who waited for calls and saved newspaper clippings no one would read. What I never expected was how deeply they'd turned my love into financial gain. I had co-signed their credit cards, covered loans for their first house, which somehow became a 4-bedroom Tudor with a heated pool, and even paid part of the down payment for a beach house. All while they claimed they couldn't afford a flight to see me on my birthday. Rain doesn't feel the same anymore. It used to be something to endure. Now, it reminds me that all storms pass eventually. When the financial support I quietly provided collapsed, so did the life they'd built on it. That's when I realized, real strength isn't in what you survive, it's in what you stop allowing. That's how I stopped being a doormat and became the storm. The cake had taken me 2 days. 3 carrot cake layers with cream cheese frosting and little marzipan carrots I shaped by hand, even though my fingers don't bend like they used to. Each carrot took almost 10 minutes, roll the orange marzipan, pinch one end, add a green stem. I made 24 and arranged them like a garden on top. Laurel had loved carrot cake since she was 7 and said chocolate was too predictable. I got up before sunrise to bake, left butter out to soften, grated carrots until my wrists ached. It was my mother's recipe, one I'd improved over the years with cinnamon and a bit of nutmeg. Harold used to sneak tastes of the frosting. I always pretended not to see. "You're driving all that way by yourself?" my neighbor Theta asked when I told her. She stood behind the hedge between our homes, gardening shears in hand, gray curls escaping her hat. We'd been neighbors for 32 years. She helped me care for Harold when he was dying, brought casseroles during my cancer recovery. "It's not the Oregon Trail, Theta," I joked. "I'm taking the interstate." "That's not the point, Birdie," she said. "Forecast says heavy rain all the way to Connecticut." "And your knees?" I said my knees and I had reached an understanding. As I placed the cake in the trunk, tucked between 2 pillows to keep it steady, I added, "They complain, I ignore them." Theta just sighed the way she always did when she knew arguing was useless. "At least take your phone. Call me when you arrive." "Yes, Mother," I teased, even though we're the same age. "Someone's got to look out for you," she muttered, turning back to her roses. I left at 4:30 in the morning with an overnight bag, my nice cardigan, and the lavender hand cream Laurel used to love as a child. A thermos of coffee steamed beside me, filling the car with French roast and a touch of cinnamon. The oldies station played softly, songs Harold and I used to dance to. The rain began just outside Millbrook, big drops hitting the windshield like a confession. By the time I reached the state line, it was a steady wall of water. I could barely see the taillights in front of me. My wipers squeaked in rhythm with the pain in my knees. You should have listened to Theta, I muttered, adjusting my grip on the wheel. My fingers were already stiffening from the damp. Still, I kept going. 9 hours lay ahead. But that was nothing compared to the joy I imagined on Laurel's face when she opened the door. I pictured her eyes going wide, hands over her mouth, the kind of squeal she used to make as a little girl. Mom! What are you doing here? And then the hug. The real, long hug I hadn't felt in far too long. The highway stretched forward, trucks spraying water and briefly blinding me. I slowed, leaned in as if closer would help me see. The cake stayed safe beside me, my fragile symbol of love and hope. At a rest stop in Massachusetts, I stepped out stiffly, knees screaming. Inside, I rubbed icy hot into my joints, its smell mixing with air freshener. A restroom worker handed me a paper towel, asking, "Long trip?" Halfway there, I replied with a tired smile. "Weather's supposed to get worse," she warned. "Maybe wait it out." But waiting wasn't an option. Birthdays don't reschedule. I had planned to arrive right before Laurel's dinner with a few friends. She didn't know I was coming, I hadn't called since deciding 3 days earlier. The surprise mattered. It would cut through the distance that had crept into our relationship. Back on the road, I turned the heat up, trying to chase away the chill in my bones. The clock read 9:47 a.m. 5 hours to go if the rain didn't delay me more. I swallowed an ibuprofen without water, flinching at the taste. To distract myself, I thought about birthdays past, Laurel at 6, beaming over a dollhouse I'd filled with tiny homemade furniture. At 12, blowing out candles on a book-shaped chocolate cake during her Nancy Drew phase. At 16, pretending she didn't like the necklace I gave her, then wearing it every day for 2 years. When had that girl become someone who treated my calls like chores? My visits, like obligations? I couldn't pinpoint when things changed. Maybe after Harold died, when I leaned on her too much. Or maybe after she married Kent, with his family's fancy vacation homes and country club membership, which made my modest home seem quaint. Or maybe it was when I got sick, and the thought of caring for me became a threat to her curated life. The rain got heavier as I neared Connecticut. A jackknifed truck up ahead slowed traffic to a crawl. My GPS added 45 minutes to my arrival time. By early afternoon, my body was screaming. My back throbbed, neck stiff, knees pulsing despite the medicine. But I didn't stop. I'd once driven through blizzards to take Laurel to a recital. Crossed flooded streets for her college graduation. A little rain wouldn't stop me now. Familiar signs near Hartford appeared like a dream. I checked the mirror, faded lipstick, hair flat on one side. I'd freshen up before seeing her. The rain eased a bit as I turned onto her street. Her Tudor home stood proud, lights glowing. I could see movement through the windows, shadows of people setting up, laughing. I parked across the street, not in their driveway, to keep the surprise. The cake was intact, marzipan carrots still in place. I walked the 20 feet to her door, but the rain had soaked me by the time I reached it. The door was unlocked. I stepped in, dripping. The smell of garlic and rosemary filled the house. It reminded me of the dinner parties they hosted, the ones I hadn't been invited to in years. Everything was curated, elegant. Photos lined the walls. Not one of them included me. My wet shoes left prints on the pristine marble floor. I hesitated. Should I call out? The cake felt heavier now. Then I heard my name. Laurel, her voice sharp, saying I'd called 3 times that week. To talk about nothing for an hour, she said. To remind me she's alone. to make me feel guilty. I stood frozen, the cake box weighing down my arms. Kent chimed in, "At least she didn't crash your birthday again." "Don't remind me," Laurel said. I had to hide just to get a break. Each word hit me like a slap. I should have turned and left. But I couldn't move. "She mentioned visiting soon," Laurel added. I told her we were too busy. "Good," Kent said. "The last thing we need is her showing up unannounced." The irony might have been funny, if it hadn't hurt so much. Then came the worst part. "God, I hope she crashes," Laurel said. "Then we wouldn't have to deal with her calls." Kent laughed. "Or at least she'd get lost." They laughed. I didn't decide to move, my body just did. I walked into the kitchen, just as I'd imagined. Laurel chopping, Kent at the stove. Their faces turned pale when they saw me. Silence. Shock. Their eyes said it all, they knew I'd heard everything. I said nothing. Just placed the cake on the counter, turned, and walked out. "Mom," Laurel called. "Wait." But I was already gone, moving faster than I should have been able to. "Bertie, please," Kent said. "We didn't mean," I closed the car door on them. Turned the key with steady hands. The wipers swiped back and forth. Truth. Pain. Clarity. In the rearview mirror, they stood in the driveway, Laurel hugging herself, Kent's hand on her shoulder. They looked small. I didn't look back again. Have you ever been betrayed in a way you couldn't ignore? Subscribe and share your story. Sometimes the hardest part is leaving what hurts us behind. The rain came harder as I reached the highway, shielding me as I escaped. My clothes clung to my skin, but that discomfort felt far away. The seat next to me, once holding the cake, was now empty. My phone buzzed once. Then again. Then it didn't stop. I didn't need to look, I knew it was Laurel. I switched it to silent. Where do you go when home turns out to be pretend? When love has terms, and relationships you've nurtured reveal themselves as burdens? The road stretched ahead, open, uncertain. I drove until the gas light came on. A motel appeared in the distance. A flickering vacancy sign invited me in. The room smelled of old cigarettes and bleach. The bedspread was faded, the wallpaper peeling. I sat on the edge of the bed, still in my damp clothes. Finally, I let it hit me. This wasn't just about one cruel moment. This had been building for years, excuses, distance, and the slow fading of love. She didn't just reject my visit. She rejected me. My phone buzzed 17 times that night. I didn't answer. Morning came. I'd slept in my clothes. My phone battery had died from too many calls. I barely recognized myself in the bathroom mirror. I showered, dressed, and checked the messages. 27 missed calls. 42 texts. "Mom, please call. You misunderstood. It wasn't about you. Bertie, let us explain. Where are you? You're scaring us. Please let us know you're safe." But I knew better now. That last part had been a bluff. Laurel wouldn't dare explain why her elderly mother had rushed out, clearly upset. I turned my phone over, screen down, and weighed my choices. I could head back home and pretend none of this happened. I could confront them and ask for an apology. Or I could choose an entirely different path. This wasn't my first letdown. There had been smaller betrayals before, the kind I'd brushed off. Like the Christmas they canceled because Kent supposedly had the flu, then posted Instagram pictures from a ski trip in Vermont. Or that weekend when my toiletries got moved from the guest bathroom to a closet right before their friends showed up. Or the graduation gift I sent to Kent's niece that got a thank you card addressed to Mr. and Mrs. Richards, as if I were a stranger. Things I'd once written off as mistakes were now revealing a pattern I couldn't keep ignoring. Instead of driving home, or back to Laurel's, I entered a new destination into the GPS. A place in White Plains. It was close enough to swing by home if needed, but far enough from Laurel to give me some breathing room. A place where I could think, without being pulled into routine. My phone rang again, not Laurel, not Kent. It was Theta. "Bertie, thank God. I've been trying to reach you since yesterday. Are you okay?" Laurel called and said something happened. I told her I'd heard Laurel wish out loud that I'd crash my car and die. There was a pause, 3 heartbeats long. "Where are you?" she asked finally, her voice tight with anger she was trying to control. "White Plains," I told her. "Good," she said. "Don't go back there. Come home when you're ready. I still have that bottle of Glenfiddich Harold gave me before he passed. Maybe it's time we open it." For the first time since stepping into Laurel's kitchen, I felt the pull of a smile. Not joy, not yet, but the quiet acknowledgement of something true. Maybe I'd lost a daughter, but I wasn't alone. "I'll be home in a few days," I told her. "Keep the scotch cold." "That's not how you drink scotch, heathen," Theta replied. The comfort of that old banter felt like the first bit of solid ground in over a day. I hung up and kept driving. The highway stretched ahead like a question I didn't yet have an answer for. The rain had cleared, washing the world fresh, though I couldn't feel that freshness just yet. But somewhere between the hurt and the horizon, a small, stubborn part of me began wondering what might come next. Not forgiveness. Maybe not ever. But something else. 3 days in that temporary space gave me something I hadn't known I needed, solitude without feeling lonely. No one calling, no need to perform. I bought practical clothes from a mall nearby, none of the floral prints Laurel always suggested to brighten up my look. I silenced my phone, except for Theta's calls. She gave updates about my house and Mr. Darcy, my cat. "You know they came by, right?" she said one night. "Laurel and Kent, first at your house, then mine when they saw you weren't there." I asked what she told them. "That you were safe and would call when ready." Kent tried that charm act of his. I may be old, but I'm not stupid. On the 4th morning, I called my bank. "I'd like information on accounts where I'm listed as a guarantor," I said after verifying who I was. The rep asked if I meant joint accounts. "No," I said, "accounts where I've backed someone financially, credit cards, loans, anything where my assets are on the line." What I learned hit harder than Laurel's cruel words. For credit cards with limits totaling $75,000, all backed by me. A personal loan for $30,000 taken out 2 years ago. A home equity guarantee on their house. "When were these opened?" I asked, voice calm despite my shaking. The oldest account was from 8 years back. The newest, just 6 months ago. Right around the time Laurel had called crying about Kent's business. I'd offered to send money, but she'd refused, saying, "We don't need charity, just moral support." What she really needed was my signature, not my sympathy. After hanging up, I contacted Harold's old investment advisor. "Mrs. Matt, what a surprise, it's been 5 years, he said. "I need a full breakdown of all my assets," I replied. By that afternoon, he'd emailed me the summary, the Colonial in Millbrook, now worth triple what we paid, Harold's life insurance, which I'd invested carefully, my teacher's pension, stock holdings that had quietly grown. Family heirlooms too, my mother's sapphire ring, Harold's grandfather's watch collection. In total, just over $1.9 million. Enough for the beachfront property Laurel and Kent had been eyeing. The one they said they couldn't afford Christmas flights because they were saving up for. It all fell into place when I called Kent's mother, Martha. We'd always been polite but distant. "Bertie, how nice, are you calling about the beach house?" she asked cheerfully. "Laurel's so excited." I kept my tone neutral. "The one they're closing on next month?" I asked. "Kent said your contribution really helped." She answered, "Yes, well, with our loan and yours, they made it work." I wasn't contributing, at least, not knowingly. But now I saw exactly what role my money played in their plans. That night, I sat on the hotel bed surrounded by printouts and notes, laying out a timeline of emotional and financial manipulation that had been built piece by piece. Every slight, every cancelled visit had come with a request for money. Every time I was made to feel left out, my financial backing was drawn deeper in. I thought of Harold, how carefully he'd built our stability. How proud he'd been to leave me secure. Take care of Laurel, he'd said before he passed. But don't let her use your heart. He'd seen what I'd refused to see. In the mirror, I didn't just see an old woman who'd been blind to betrayal. I saw a survivor. Someone who'd raised a child alone while Harold was deployed, who'd earned a master's at 40 while working full-time, who'd fought cancer with more bravery than she now faced this family betrayal. That night, I made one last call, to Harriet McGill, my bridge partner and the sharpest estate attorney around. I need to see you, I said. It's about my will. She didn't flinch. Is this about Laurel? She asked. Yes. And it's about me too. About time, she said. My office, Thursday, 10 a.m. When I hung up, I didn't feel grief. I felt clarity. This wasn't revenge, it was justice, starting with the woman in the mirror. Harriet's office looked out over the coast, but the furniture was too stiff and formal to make you want to stay long, just like Harriet herself. At 72, she still dyed her hair fiery red and wore heels that made her tower even taller. You look different, she said instead of greeting me. I am different, I replied. She nodded once and motioned toward a chair. Tell me everything. So I did. From the 9-hour drive to the overheard conversation, all the way through the financial discoveries. Harriet wrote notes without interruption, her face unreadable, even when I shared the most painful parts. When I finished, she asked, and now? I want to change my will, I said. Everything. And I need help cutting off my financial support without risking liability. Harriet smiled briefly, genuinely. I've waited years to hear you say that. Let's start with the will. For 2 hours, we pieced together a new estate plan. The house on Maple Street, the investments, and all financial assets would go to the Millbrook Women's Shelter, where I'd volunteered after Harold passed. My personal belongings would be divided among friends, with special items set aside for Theta and neighbors who had truly cared. And Laurel? Harriet asked, pen poised. I thought for a moment. My recipe box and diaries. So she can read about the mother she ignored and the life she didn't value. Harriet made a note. Deliciously petty. I approve. Next came the financial disentanglement. Harriet brought in her partner, a banking law specialist. Together, we drafted letters removing my guarantees from Laurel and Kent's credit cards and loans, effective immediately. We told their mortgage company I was rescinding the secondary guarantee on their home loan. We closed forgotten joint accounts and opened new ones in my name alone. Your actions will hit them fast, Harriet's partner warned. Credit limits will be cut, maybe to zero. Loan terms might change. I understand, I said, signing the papers with steady hands. Harriet added, without your backing, the beach house deal will almost certainly collapse. I thought of Laurel's cruel words, her wish that I'd crash. I thought of their laughter and their casual cruelty, treating me like a resource, not a person. So be it, I said quietly. Before leaving, I made one more call, to Martha Richards again. I wanted to let you know I've removed my financial guarantees on Laurel and Kent's accounts, I said bluntly. She sounded confused. What guarantees? The ones they used for credit, loans, and, I believe, the beach house loan. There was silence before she said, Bertie, they told us you were paying half the down payment. That's why we loaned them the rest. A bitter laugh escaped me. I'm not, and I won't be. You should know before the closing. Back in my hotel room that night, I felt no triumph or guilt. Just calm clarity. I ordered room service, a rare treat, and watched the sunset over the White Plains skyline. My phone had been buzzing with unknown numbers all afternoon. I suspected Kent was trying different phones to reach me. Finally, I answered. "What have you done?" Kent's voice was tight with panic, not concern. "Hello, Kent. I'm fine, thanks for asking. The bank called about our credit cards. Accounts are being restructured since you lost my guarantee. The mortgage company too. And Martha called about the beach house." "Yes, I spoke with her. You told your parents I was contributing to the down payment," he said quickly. "We never discussed that. It was a misunderstanding," he said. "Look, we need to talk about this. Whatever you think you heard that day, I know exactly what I heard. And everything I've learned since makes it clear this wasn't a one-time mistake but a pattern. Bertie, please. No more, Kent. No more manipulations. No more guarantees. No more financing a life that excludes me except when my credit score is needed. Tell Laurel this, the woman she hoped would crash has finally woken up." I hung up and blocked his number. Then I booked a flight home for the next day. 9 hours driving had led to revelation. A 90-minute flight would take me toward resolution. Packing my new clothes into my old suitcase, I felt neither young nor old, victorious nor defeated. I felt free from illusions about my daughter's love, free from financial ties to people who wished me harm. Free to rewrite my life's final chapters without obligations to those who had given up on me. The rain that had accompanied my trip to Laurel's had cleared, leaving bright skies, as if the universe approved my clarity. At 78, I finally understood that some storms aren't meant to be endured, they're meant to wash away what no longer deserves to stay. Have you ever faced the choice between peace and family? If this resonates, please like and subscribe. When would you have drawn your line? Share in the comments and follow the journey where the consequences begin. Home felt different when I returned. The rooms in my colonial had the same furniture, photos, and view of the maple tree Harold planted when Laurel was born. But I moved through them as someone new, a woman who finally saw her worth. Mr. Darcy greeted me with his usual indifference, then settled on my lap that evening, making sure I wouldn't disappear again. Theta brought the promised scotch and joined me on the back porch as twilight fell over the garden. "They've been calling me every day," she said, swirling amber liquid in her glass. Laurel sounds less worried, more angry now. "The financial notices must be arriving," I said. Theta raised her eyebrows. "What exactly did you do?" I told her everything, the new will, the removed guarantees, the beach house revelation. When I finished, Theta raised her glass in a quiet toast. "Harold would be proud," she said simply. 3 days after my return, the first letter arrived. Thick cream stationery, Laurel's precise handwriting on the envelope. Formal, so unlike our past. "Dear Mom. I don't know what's going on. You won't answer our calls. The bank says our credit limit was lowered because you're no longer our guarantor. Kent's mother said you called about the loan we took last year. Whatever you think you heard that day, you misunderstood. We were joking. It was dark humor after a tough week. You know how Kent and I talk sometimes. Please call us. We're worried about you. Love, Laurel." No apology. No recognition. It was just gaslighting hidden as concern, financial panic disguised as worry from a daughter. I folded the letter carefully and placed it in the box where I kept Laurel's childhood drawings, adding this last piece of proof to our relationship's archive. That evening, Kent called from yet another new phone number. Without even saying hello, he said, "The beach house closing is next Friday. The sellers won't extend again. We need the guarantee back by Monday." "Hello, Kent. I'm afraid that's not possible," I replied. "Bertie, be reasonable. This is our dream home. We've been working toward this for years." Interesting, I thought. During those same years, you told me you couldn't afford plane tickets to visit at Christmas. Silence followed. "That was different," he said. "Travel during the holidays is expensive. But a $500,000 beach house isn't. Goodbye, Kent. I hung up feeling neither regret nor satisfaction, just a quiet certainty that I was finally standing on solid ground. The next week brought rising desperation. Laurel sent daily letters, each less about fixing things and more about financial urgency. Kent left voice messages, switching between charm and thinly disguised blame. Even their friends called, people I'd only met briefly at events where I was introduced as Laurel's mom, not by my own name. Suddenly, they acted worried about my well-being. Their mortgage company sent a formal letter to my home asking for proof of my withdrawal as secondary guarantor. Their credit card companies did the same. Every day, more papers arrived, showing how deeply they'd involved me in their finances without me knowing. Each envelope was proof of how thoroughly they'd tied me to their financial mess. On Wednesday, a text came from an unknown number. Mom, please. We're going to lose the beach house. All that money down the drain. Is that what you want? I didn't reply, but the message made something clear. Even now, after everything, Laurel cared more about the house than our relationship. In none of her messages did she address the cruel words I'd overheard, except to say they were a joke I misunderstood. Friday morning, I met Zoe, Laurel's best friend since college, at a cafe in town. I had called her, not the other way around. Thank you for coming, I said as we settled with our coffee. Zoe looked uneasy. Lel's worried sick about you, Bertie. She says you misunderstood something and now you're punishing her. I smiled. Did she tell you what I misunderstood? Zoe said, she said you overheard a private conversation and took it the wrong way. I heard my daughter hope I would crash my car and die, I said calmly. Tell me, Zoe, how should I have taken that? Her eyes grew wide. She didn't say that. She couldn't have. She did. And her husband laughed. I took a sip of tea. Did she also tell you they've been using me as a credit guarantor for years? That they borrowed money from Kent's parents for a down payment on a beach house while telling me they couldn't afford to visit for Christmas? Zoe was silent. That said enough. I'm not meeting you to complain, I continued. I'm meeting you to give you this. I slid an envelope across the table. It's an invitation to my 79th birthday party next month. I'd like you to come. Laurel and Kent aren't invited. As Zoe left, visibly shaken, I felt neither guilt nor vindication, just the quiet certainty that once spoken, truth creates its own justice. That afternoon, I got a text from Martha Richards. The beach house closing has been cancelled. I think you should know they're blaming you to anyone who will listen. I replied, thanks for telling me. I'm sorry they put you in this position. Her response was quick. Don't be. George and I are starting to see them more clearly now. We should have listened to you years ago. Maybe that was my first real victory, not the financial consequences I set in motion, but that small recognition I hadn't been wrong all along. 4 weeks after leaving the cake, I got another call from Laurel. This time, I answered. Mom, she said, her voice breaking with what sounded like relief, finally. We've been so worried. Have you? I asked, keeping my tone light. Of course, we have. You disappeared. You changed your finances without telling us. You've been talking to our friends behind our backs. I heard what you said, Laurel, I interrupted, about hoping I would crash, about wanting a weekend without my guilt trips. Silence stretched between us. That was just, don't, I said. Don't insult me by lying now. She started crying. Not the manipulative tears I'd heard so often before, but what sounded like real sobs. We didn't mean it. We were just stressed. You call so often and sound so lonely. We feel guilty. That's the problem, I said. You see my love as a burden, my calls as an obligation, my presence as something to endure. That's not fair, she whispered. Neither was wishing me dead, I replied. But here we are. What do you want from me? She finally asked. Nothing, I said. That's the point. I don't want anything from you anymore. Not your time, attention, or fake affection. I've changed my will, removed my financial support, and started building a life that doesn't depend on crumbs from my only child. You can't just cut us off. Her voice rose, panic showing. The beach house closing failed. Our credit cards are maxed out. Kent's parents are asking questions about loans we can't repay. And still, her concern wasn't for me but for what I could provide. Is that why you're calling, Laurel? To get the money flowing again? No, she protested, but too quickly. I want to fix our relationship. I love you, Mom. Do you? I asked. Because love needs respect, and respect needs honesty. You haven't been honest with me for years, about your feelings, finances, or your place in my life. That's not true, she said, but without conviction. When's the last time you visited without asking for something? Called just to talk, not to manage my expectations or set boundaries. Treated me like someone you value instead of an obligation. Her silence said enough. I won't be your bank anymore, Laurel. Nor your emotional punching bag. If you want a relationship with me, it will be on new terms, built on mutual respect, genuine affection, and total honesty. If I can't have that, my voice hardened, then we don't have a relationship. Simple. You would choose being right over being my mother, she snapped. After everything you've said about family coming first, family does come first. I agree. But what you and Kent showed me isn't family. It's exploitation disguised as obligation. I deserve better. This is about money, isn't it? She said suddenly. You're punishing us financially because your feelings got hurt. No, Laurel. It's about consequences. For maybe the first time in your adult life, your actions toward me have real consequences. The money part is just the most obvious. Kent says you've always been manipulative, she said in a last desperate jab, using guilt to control me. I laughed, genuinely amused. Says the man who convinced me to guarantee loans for a beach house you said you couldn't afford. The irony would be delicious if it weren't so sad. So that's it. 30 years of being my mother erased over one overheard comment? Not erased, Laurel. Transformed. I'm still your mother. I still love the child you were and the woman you could be. But I won't accept the role you gave me anymore, financial safety net and emotional scapegoat. If you want a relationship with me, build it on truth, starting with admitting what I heard that day. If I apologize, say I'm sorry for what you heard, will you put the guarantees back? Help with the beach house. Even now, she couldn't separate relationship from money. For her, an apology was a deal, not healing. Goodbye, Laurel, I said softly. When you're ready to talk about us without money, you know where to find me. I hung up before she could answer, feeling neither victory nor defeat, something deeper. Peace. For the first time in years, I spoke my truth without fearing abandonment. Because I'd already been abandoned in the ways that mattered. Outside my window, spring had arrived unnoticed. The maple tree Harold planted was budding, green promises reaching for the sun. Soon it would shade the garden I'd neglected last summer, too busy trying to hold a relationship that only existed in my hope. This year, I would plant tomatoes again and maybe something new, blueberries or asparagus Theta suggested. Plants that take years to grow but, once rooted, last for decades. At 78, I still had time to grow something real and lasting. 6 weeks after the storm, I hosted my birthday party in the garden of my Millbrook home. Not the grand event Laurel always pushed for, you should rent the country club, Mom. Make it special. Instead, something truly reflective of who I am. Feta came with her famous potato salad. Harriet arrived, her fiery red hair visible from 3 houses away. My bridge club, book group, and the women I volunteered with at the library all came, people who had been pushed to the edges of my life while I focused on those who valued me least. Zoe came too, having chosen our honest conversation over decades of friendship with Laurel. She tried to make me choose sides, Zoe admitted as we arranged cucumber sandwiches on my mother's silver platters. Said I was betraying her by coming today. And yet here you are, I said. Here I am, she agreed. Loyalty has limits, especially when someone expects you to ignore cruelty. We ate carrot cake, not the recipe I left on Laurel's counter, but a new one with ginger, orange zest, and a touch of cardamom. I served it on my best china, the set I'd saved for special occasions that never seemed special enough. Harriet raised her glass as the evening light turned golden over my lawn. To Bertie, who at 79 has more courage than most half her age. To new beginnings, Theta added, and to knowing your own worth. Looking at these faces, some lifelong friends, others newer, I felt my chest expand. This was chosen family, real connection based on respect, not obligation. Laurel's texts still came, less often now, but still calculating. Mom, the mortgage company is asking questions. Kent's car needed repairs they couldn't afford right now, and Laurel's last message questioned why I was punishing them financially over a careless comment. I chose not to reply. Some lessons come only through experience, and Laurel's journey of learning through consequences was still unfolding. Instead, I focused on rebuilding the life I had paused while waiting for my daughter's approval. I rejoined the library board I had left when Laurel said it took too much time away from family. I also signed up for watercolor classes at the community center, something I'd wanted to try ever since Harold passed but never made a priority. Most importantly, I started volunteering 3 afternoons a week at the Millbrook Women's Shelter. Many of the women there were about Laurel's age, rebuilding their lives after relationships that had taken more than they gave. I helped with resumes, practiced interview skills, and sometimes just listened as they processed how they ended up in places they never expected. You don't seem like most of the older volunteers, one young woman said while we worked on her job applications. You really get how someone can love you and hurt you at the same time. I've had some experience with that, I answered. In their stories of manipulation and gaslighting, I saw shadows of my own life, not in degree, but in kind. When the shelter director heard I'd changed my will to benefit the organization, she insisted on taking me to lunch. That's quite a gift, Bertie. Can I ask why? I told her about Laurel, the conversation I overheard, and how I finally understood how deeply I'd been used. So, this is about punishing your daughter, she asked, not judging, just clarifying. No, I said after thinking, it's about honoring what truly matters. These women are working hard to rebuild with dignity. My money should help build strength, not enable entitlement. By autumn, I'd found a new rhythm, both fresh and familiar, like rediscovering a part of myself I'd set aside long ago. I planted the blueberry bushes Theta had suggested and joined a hiking group for seniors, exploring local trails every week. Laurel sent a store-bought birthday card with a generic message and a restaurant gift card, no personal note, no mention of our last talk. I replied politely with a thank you text, keeping the boundaries I'd set. Friendly, but firm. Meanwhile, the financial consequences for Laurel and Kent kept unfolding. Through Martha, who I now met with for coffee monthly, I learned they'd downsized to a smaller home. Kent had taken a second job since they couldn't afford the tutor without my help. Laurel had started selling real estate, a job she once thought beneath her education. I didn't take pleasure in their struggles but recognized they were necessary. I'd shielded them from natural consequences for too long. Now, reality was giving them a chance to grow through hardship. In November, as the first snow lightly covered my maple tree, Zoe called with news: Laurel was pregnant, about 3 months along. I sat with that news for days, my feelings tangled like a knot I couldn't undo. A grandchild, something I had hoped for but stopped expecting as Laurel neared 50. A new life, existing beyond the complications between us. After thinking it over, I sent Laurel a proper card on fine stationery, not a text or email, with a simple message: I've heard your news. A child changes everything. Sometimes by their presence, sometimes by their absence. I wish you the wisdom to value what matters most. If you ever want to talk about a relationship built on mutual respect instead of financial ties, my door is open. With love. She didn't reply, but I hadn't expected her to. Some seeds take time to grow, if they grow at all. 6 months after that rainy drive to Connecticut, I was in my kitchen making a Thanksgiving shopping list. I'd invited Theta, Harriet, and several new friends from the shelter and hiking group, people who had become my chosen family during this season of change. My phone rang from an unknown number. I almost let it go to voicemail, but curiosity won. Hello, Mrs. Matt. This is Dr. Leland from Hartford Memorial. I have your daughter Laurel here. She asked me to call you. My heart skipped. Is she okay? She's stable. She had some bleeding and was worried about the pregnancy. Tests are clear, but we're keeping her overnight for observation. Her husband's away on work, and she asked if I would call you. Thank you for letting me know, I said, already thinking about the drive to Hartford. Then the doctor hesitated and added softly, she asked if you could come. She said to tell you she's sorry, but only if you meant what you wrote in your card. I closed my eyes for a moment. Please tell her I'll be there in 3 hours. The drive to Hartford was nothing like 6 months ago, no rain, no cake, no hope or heartbreak, just clear November sunshine and the quiet hum of my car. I was heading to a conversation years and miles in the making. Laurel looked small lying in the hospital bed, her hand resting protectively on her slight belly. When she saw me, tears filled her eyes, not the manipulative tears I'd come to expect, but something more honest and clear. You came, she said simply. You asked, I answered, sitting beside her. We sat quietly, the beeps and distant hospital sounds filling the space. I've been seeing a therapist, she said at last. After the beach house fell through, at first just to handle stress, but now it's more than that. I waited, giving her space. She asked questions no one had ever asked me, why I resented her calls, why I felt obligation instead of connection, why I could say cruel things about someone who had only shown love. Laurel met my eyes. I had no good answers. Then I said softly, now I think I'm starting to understand, I've been punishing you for years. For being alone after Dad died, for needing me when I wanted independence, for being a simpler life when I was trying to build something impressive. Her voice cracked. For loving me unconditionally when I couldn't love myself that way. It's not a full reckoning, those take years, not months, but it's a start, a seed breaking through hard ground. She smiled weakly. The financial stuff, the lost beach house, downsizing, Kent's second job, has been really hard. But my therapist says it's the best thing that could have happened. We were building on appearances, not real connection. And what do you think? I asked. I think she's right, she said. And I think you knew it all along. Laurel reached for my hand gently. I'm not asking for money or guarantees, Mom. I just want to try building something real between us before the baby comes. I took her hand, feeling its warmth. I'd like that, too. That day at the hospital didn't solve everything. Real healing isn't a moment but a journey with ups and downs. In the months after, we built new habits, weekly coffees where money was off the table, occasional family dinners with deeper conversation. Kent struggled most with the change. His charm, once his currency, lost value without financial gain, but he tried, for Laurel and their child. I kept living the life I built during our estrangement. The shelter stayed in my will, though I added a trust for my grandchild's education. My friendships grew stronger. My blueberry bushes took root. I painted watercolors, hiked trails, and baked new recipes all my own. Some might call what I did revenge, but I see it as consequences. At 79, I finally learned that love without respect isn't love at all, and sometimes the kindest thing is to stop pretending. Now, rain falls differently, not as a storm to endure but as a reminder that even the hardest things clear away, leaving the world fresh and ready for what's next. The carrot cake I bake now has less sugar and more spice, maybe like me, maybe like the truth that finally set us free. This morning, While mixing batter for a new recipe, my phone lit up with a message from Laurel, an ultrasound photo, a tiny black and white profile, and the words, "Your granddaughter. She has your nose." I touched the screen gently, a window into a future I hadn't known if I'd see. Then I went back to baking, folding in fresh ingredients, making something new, just like the life I'm building at 79. One honest conversation, one boundary, one choice at a time. The timer rang. It was time to take the cake out of the oven. Time to move forward with eyes open, heart cautious but not closed. Time to accept that some journeys don't start with a long drive through rain, but with the courage to say enough. I am worth more than this. We all are. At what age did you finally learn to value yourself above others' expectations? It's never too late to set boundaries and start over. Whether you're 29, 59, or 79, Bird's journey reminds us that self-respect isn't selfish, it's essential. Share this story if you've ever had to walk away to find yourself. Follow for more stories of resilience, reinvention, and the quiet courage it takes to begin again. Remember, you're never too old to bake a new recipe for your life. I want to hear from you. What's one boundary you've set that changed your life? Comment below, and let's build a community of strength and healing. If this story inspired you, please share it and follow along for more stories about the quiet courage it takes to begin again. You're never alone on your journey.